Hi, everyone. I'm Bella Engelberg and the chair of the RIdley Democrats, and this is our RIdley Democratic Committee poll watching orientation for the November 5th election 2024. So today we're going to talk about what a poll watcher is and what your role is on election day as a poll watcher. Uh, we'll talk about what should happen on election day, who you might see on election day, and we're going to talk about the election protection team and how they can help us. So a poll watcher is a person who is really the eyes and the ears and the voice of candidates and the Democratic Party in a polling place. So your job is to help ensure that voting is taking place according to the election laws. You're not the only person doing this. A lot of people are paying attention to make sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to. You will have a poll watcher certificate. This will be in the bag that is provided to each polling place by the RIdley Dems, or you may get it from your own committee if you are from outside RIdley. The certificate has a raised embossed seal on it. That's how you know it is an official poll watcher certificate. It will also list a specific precinct and it will have the name of a candidate. You can go anywhere in Delaware County that candidate is on the ballot. So if, for example, the candidate listed on your ballot is Mary Gay Scanlon, you can pretty much go to any polling place in Delaware County. Of course, we would like you to be with us in RIdley. When you go into a polling place with your poll watch certificate, introduce yourself to the judge of elections and show them your certificate, but don't let them keep it. That's for you to keep. You may need to show it to somebody else later. So, poll watchers or poll observers, as some people call them, what are they watching or observing for? So, first of all, are the voting processes being followed according to law? Are the voting materials being handled appropriately and also according to law? So, the ballots, for example. Is there any partisan behavior going on inside the polls? Is anybody trying to suppress voters from voting or intimidating them in any way? And importantly, for this election, we want to keep an eye on the other poll watchers who may be coming from other parties. Are they also following election law? This is also that voters can have a really good legal experience and vote without being intimidated. So there's some things you can do as a poll watcher. So here's the things you can do. You can ask questions to the poll workers, but don't do it in a way that impedes their work. You can sit or stand anywhere in the room where you can see what's happening. And again, you do not want to be impeding the poll workers or the voters. You can examine the voter poll pad if no voters are in line waiting to vote. And you and the other poll watchers can make a good faith challenge about the eligibility of a voter to the judge of elections. So, if, for example, you believe that a voter has moved out of the precinct, you could challenge that voter's eligibility. But that's not really what we want you to do. We want you to be there to make sure that the folks who are voting are having that safe, legal experience with no intimidation. Here's what you can't do. You cannot ask questions of voters and you cannot confront voters. Do not speak to voters inside the polling place. You can't sit at the poll watchers table, the poll workers table, excuse me. You can't look over a voter's shoulder when they're voting. You can't fill in for a poll worker who takes a break. You're not trained for that. You're not appointed to do that. And you cannot challenge a voter's eligibility based on their appearance or their party affiliation. And importantly, neither can any other poll watchers do that. The judge of elections is allowed to limit the number of poll watchers in the polling place. And so if there are too many poll watchers, if people are being annoying, people may be asked to leave. So be aware of that. If there's a lot of poll watchers, the judge of elections has every right to ask you or other poll watchers to leave. All right, so supposing you see an issue, what should you do? First of all, talk politely with the judge of elections. Be kind, support them in the job they're doing. If you find that the Joe cannot or will not address the issue, call election protection, and you'll be getting the number to call election protection. We'd like you to fill out an incident report. Whatever you do, don't get angry with the judge of elections. Don't speak to voters inside the polling place. You can speak to them outside the polling place if needed, and don't have any disruptive conversations with other poll watchers. If you're not sure if what you're seeing is an issue, we have a rapid response team. And that's myself, Bella Engelbach. You'll see phone numbers here, and Jen Riga Murphy, our wonderful vice chair. You might want to take a moment and write those phone numbers down. Make sure you have them in your phone. My number is 610-659-5822. You can get Jen at 484-678-3579. So please call us or text us if you have a concern about something and you don't know for sure if it's an issue, but do not hesitate to call election protection. We'll talk about that later, what they do and how they can help. All right. If you'd like to get thrown out, here's how to do it. The Joe will direct a watcher to leave the polling place if any of the following things occur. First of all, if the watcher becomes abusive or needlessly argumentative. So don't be abusive, don't be needlessly argumentative. If a watcher repeatedly challenges voters' rights to receive a ballot, you can get thrown out if you are campaigning inside or distributing literature inside, so you know not to do that. And be really careful not to wear any clothing or other item that promotes a candidate or a party or displays an election slogan. So if you're also outside greeting, and most of our poll watchers will be doing that as well, you may have a hat or a button or a shirt that you'd like to wear for that. Make sure that that's taken off, covered up before you go inside. All right, so here's some things to look out for. Sometimes there are partisan check-in tables, and they can be put up by other parties and they kind of confuse people, that people think that they're checking in at those tables or they have to stop at that table. So that's something to look out for. That could be an issue that we would want to know about. If people are being told, especially outside the polls, you're not on our list, maybe you're at the wrong polling place, that shouldn't happen. Everybody has the right to go inside, find out if they are at the right polling place, and if they're not, be told where the correct polling place is or be given a provisional ballot to vote on. Sometimes we'll see kind of a gauntlet or a tight line of greeters in front of the polling place. This is very common in Ridley, making it difficult to get in the door without being handed a sample ballot that people don't want. Entrances must be kept clear, and this is something that you can ask the judge of elections to come outside and talk to people about, make sure that the entranceway is clear. Is there any other behavior going on that is or might be perceived as harassing or threatening to voters? And if you feel uncomfortable, maybe other people feel uncomfortable. That might be an issue. And then particularly for this election, there might be crowded polls inside. So, are there people inside there who should not be inside? The election workers will try to control the traffic and make sure that people have time and space to vote without being harassed. Members of the election board, and that is the judge of elections, the inspectors and clerks, are supposed to be neutral agents. They are neutral agents, even though they are members of a particular party. They must be neutral inside. So just keep an eye out for that too. They really cannot be partisan inside. They should not be talking about their candidate. They should not be dissing other candidates. It's important to know that in RIdley Township, many of the poll workers who volunteer are also involved in or are related to our Republican-dominated municipal government and school board. And so it's easy for them, and when they're among their friends, to forget the rules of neutrality in their conversations. So definitely something to listen for. So what should be happening on Election Day? The voter experience should be like this. Voters should have access to the polling place without harassment or intimidation. Their registration information should be correct on the voter rolls in the poll pad. In most cases, they should not be asked for ID unless they are a first-time voter in that precinct. There are some circumstances other than being a first-time voter that people may be asked for ID, but most of the time, that will be noted in the poll pad. Most of the time, people should not be being asked for ID. They should receive the correct ballot. This is a general election, so everybody gets the same ballot. They can vote on a provisional ballot if they cannot receive a regular ballot for some reason. So if, for example, they had a mail-in ballot and they brought it in and decided that they were going to vote in person instead, but they had lost some of the pieces of the mail-in ballot, then they might be given a provisional ballot to vote on. So they should always be given that opportunity to vote, either being sent to a correct polling place, voting on a regular ballot, or voting on a provisional ballot. They should complete their ballot in privacy and free of interference. So there should be space set up. People should be able to go and fill out their ballot without other people looking at them. And the ballot should be scanned, and if it can't be scanned right away for some reason, if the scan is broken, for example, it must go into a secure lockbox. The voter should be the person who retains custody of the ballot. The poll workers should not be touching the voters' ballots. So first thing in the morning, the poll should open 7 a.m. That means that the poll workers have probably arrived at 6 a.m. or perhaps even earlier to make sure that everything is set up and ready to go at 7. You're allowed to go in before 7 o'clock and make sure that that things appear to be okay. You can ask if the scanners have been zeroed out, meaning that there are no votes recorded on them at the point at which the polls open. What you should see on election day is the election board members working as a team without regard to their party affiliation. You should see that only those people permitted by election law would be inside the polling place, and that would be those election workers, the voters, occasionally a constable, and poll watchers like yourself. There may be occasionally somebody coming in from the county to help with equipment issues. The names of voters signing in should be repeated out loud, and this is for any poll watchers who are doing strike lists. Voters whose name does not appear in the list must be assisted to vote, so they must be sent to the correct polling place or given a provisional ballot. Again, there should be places where ballots can be completed with privacy. Everything should be kept in an orderly fashion, and blank ballots and spoiled ballots should be accounted for, and you'll see that at the end of the day. There should be sufficient ballots for the voters. If there's not, the Joe can actually call into the county and have more ballots brought over. And there should be absolutely no partisan materials or signs inside the polling place. Again, no voter should ever be turned away. Anyone who believes they are eligible and wants to vote should not leave the polling place without voting. They are always allowed to vote by provisional ballot. If the voter is not on the list of registered voters, or the voter has applied for a vote by mail ballot that they do not have in their possession, they are still allowed to vote by provisional ballot. As I mentioned previously, first-time voters will need to show ID. There are several forms of ID that they can use. That could be their driver's license or a pen.id card. It could be another government ID. It can be a passport, forces ID, student ID, and employee ID is also acceptable. And also there are non-photo forms of identification that a voter can provide. And so the Joe will have a list of these, and most forms of ID really should be accepted. Sometimes you will see a voter who is needing assistance. They can request assistance if they require it. The judge of elections, the voter's employer, or their union leaders cannot assist them. People who can't hold a pen can use the touch writer system, and it also has headphones for visually impaired voters to help them vote. You may be asked to assist a voter. You may do that, and that will be noted that you or somebody else has assisted a voter. Usually they have a family member with them to help them. All right, so the election day is almost over. It's time to close the polls. Polls close at 8 p.m. However, anyone who is in line at 8 p.m. must be allowed to vote. So as a poll watcher, this is an important thing to watch out for, that people are not kept away from the polls if they have arrived before 8 p.m. If they're in line, they must be allowed to vote. Once the polls close, only people permitted by election law should be inside the polling place. So that would be the poll workers and the poll watchers. Candidates should not be in there. People's friends should not be in there. The poll workers have written directions from the County Bureau of Elections, and you'll watch them go through checklists as they count up the ballots and the spoiled ballots as they shut the machines down, and they will continue to work as a team, again, without regard to their party affiliation. The machines will print tallies. You are entitled to a copy of a printed tally as a poll watcher. We may be calling you or texting you asking to get information from those tallies. We'll give you more information about that on election day. So here's some things to look out for. The total number of voters recorded by the clerk in the poll pad should match the sum of totals from the machine votes. The tallies should be posted on the door of the polling place so that people can see them after the election is over. And everything will get returned to the county, including the ballots and the V drives from the scanners. And the judge of election will probably be up very late on election night returning the equipment, the ballots and the V drives. So who are all the people involved? The judge of elections is going to be in charge of all the election day activities and in charge of all the people. The majority inspector is going to assist the judge of elections, and they're going to share responsibility for the operation of the polling site. The majority inspector and the minority inspector will manage the poll pads. The minority inspector has the same responsibilities as the majority inspector. They are expected to appoint a clerk. Sometimes they do, sometimes that person is assigned by the county Bureau of Elections. The minority inspector has some special responsibilities regarding provisional ballots and will keep an envelope that has a copy of the election results and the numbered list of voters. And they're supposed to keep that for 2 years in a sealed envelope. The clerk will assist in the operation of the polling location, and the machine operator will assist in operating the ballot scanning equipment. You will see people helping each other out on almost all of these roles. You may see constables from time to time. They may only enter the polling place at the request of the judge of elections, unless they're actually going in to vote because it is their polling place. They may not serve as greeters. We sometimes see constables who know the Republican greeters hanging out outside a poll. If you feel they're hanging out too long, go ahead and have a word with the judge of elections about that. In an emergency, the Joe is instructed to call the constables first. If there's a really serious emergency with bodily harm threatened, they may also call 911 and get the police there. But police should really not be at the polling places as a regular practice. Police, whether they're in uniform or not, are only supposed to be at the polling place to respond to an emergency, keep the peace, serve a warrant, or cast their own ballot. Again, if there's a problem, the Joe will call a constable first. But if there's a true emergency, you or anyone else can call 911. Please do not, if you feel really unsafe, do not hesitate to call 911. Again, you will see poll watchers. All political parties have poll watchers. You may see poll watchers from other parties or other Democratic poll watchers at your polling places. We all need to follow the same rules. For this election, we know that there are poll watchers who believe that there are a lot of fraudulent voters, and they may be in the polling place specifically to challenge voters. They are not permitted to speak to or challenge voters directly. They must present all their challenges to the judge of elections. Candidates, you may see candidates outside. They can only come inside the polling place to vote. And when they do come inside, they need to remove or cover any of their partisan clothing, take off their buttons or their pins before they go inside. They definitely can greet voters outside the polling place. Finally, I want to talk about election protection. Election protection, and you may sometimes hear people talk about this as the boiler room, is a team of legally trained people that the legally trained Democrats who are on call to answer questions and, if necessary, speak with judges of election and take other actions when issues arise. So, if something needs to be taken to court, these would be the people who would represent the Democratic Party in court. If you have a question or concern not answered by the Joe, call election protection to report the issue and get clarification and support. It really is essential that you promptly report any suspicious activity or concerns. Nobody can do anything about a problem the next day. It can only be handled when it's actually happening. For this election, there are election protection members that are going to be strategically stationed around the county. So if you have an issue, somebody should be able to get to you pretty quickly. You won't have to wait half an hour or an hour for somebody to come from media. If you need to call election protection, go outside to call. Don't call them from inside the polling place. When you're outside, if there's a voter who's involved in the issue, you can also speak to and get information from that voter to help you understand what the problem really is. Be ready to provide as much information as you can to the people at election protection. The line is sometimes busy. Just keep calling. Don't leave a voicemail message. Keep trying the numbers until somebody answers. And you yourself should not go to court for any issue unless election protection asks you to go with them. And if you do need to call election protection, please call or text a member of the RIdley Rapid Response Team. So please call me. Please call Jen. We want to know what's going on. We want to help you. There are incident reports inside the bag. This is an example of what you might fill out. This was just to help you gather the information that you would provide to election protection. There's some contact information that you might find helpful. There'll be in your bag, there will be a list of phone numbers of websites that you will find useful. So I'd really like to thank you. The whole committee would like to thank you for working as a poll watcher on election day. We can't have free and fair elections without wonderful, dedicated volunteers like yourself. We're really grateful for your service.